Hello from Fort Worth, Texas, where I'm here with many amazing artifacts found by my grandfather and grandmother on my father's side, who I called Red and Potshot. Today I wanted to talk to you about a parable that has really been giving me a lot of hope during some hard times lately. And you may have heard of it. It's sometimes called the parable of the farmer. I most recently heard it in a Shia LeBeouf interview, surprisingly, which I'll share with you down below because I actually was incredibly inspired by this interview with Shia LeBeouf. So I'm not sure where the parable originated. I've heard that it originated in China, and that may or may not be true. I will also link to some versions of the parable down below. So I call this story Good or Bad, Hard to Say. And that is what I possibly want to get tattooed on myself because it's such an important reminder that we really don't know if things are good or bad. It's hard to say. Or as Shia LeBeouf says in his retelling of it, I really can't call this one. Can't call it. Peter. So this is how the parable goes. There is a farmer who is farming the land out in the countryside with his son, and they are dependent upon their horse in order to be able to farm the land. One day, their horse runs away, and the son is freaking out. He's like, well, Dad, our life is ruined. We can't farm anymore. We're in for it. We're not going to be able to go on, and just everything is over. We lost our horse, game's up. And the farmer says, good or bad, hard to say. Or as Shia LaBeouf puts it, son, I really can't call this one. And the son's like, okay, whatever, you're crazy. It's clearly bad. I can call it, but okay. So the horse runs away. The horse is gone. They can't farm. It seems like their whole life is ruined. And a few days later, the horse comes back with a whole herd of wild horses. Let's say in some versions I've heard their horse is a stallion and he comes back with 10 mares and just brings back this whole harem of horses, this whole herd of horses. And the son is like, this is amazing, Dad. Now we're going to be rich and we're going into the horse trade. And this is just the best thing that's ever happened to us. Things have never been better. Our whole life is about to change. And his father says, good or bad, hard to say. Can't call this one, son. I really can't call this one. And his son's like, whatever. Clearly our whole life has just been made. So the son starts riding all of the horses to train them, and one of the horses throws him off, and he has a terrible accident, and he really, really hurts his leg to the point where he's crippled, and it may never heal fully, and he's not able to help his dad with anything, and he's completely holed up in the house and just crippled. And the neighbors come and everyone says, wow, your whole life is ruined. Your son is crippled now. We're so sorry that happened. This is the worst thing ever. And the farmer, the dad is like, good or bad, hard to say. I really can't call this one. And so a couple weeks later, an army comes through, an army that's amassing throughout the whole country to go and challenge the powers that be and have some kind of revolution. And they come to the town and they recruit all of the young men in the town. They take them away from their family and they make them join the army, and they come to the old man's house and they're like, all right, let's go. Your son's coming. We're recruiting him into the army. And the old man's like, sorry, he's crippled. So he literally can't walk. He can't go. He can't fight. And so the son doesn't have to go fight and gets to stay with the old man. And of course, this could just go on and on forever, right? We could start at any point in our lives and we could keep going to any point of our lives. And maybe we can all be encouraged to look at certain times in our lives and just say, you know, good or bad, hard to say. I really can't call this one. And recently for me, my dad has been having a lot of health problems, and it's been really, really, really hard. Really, 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 really hard. And there have been many complications coming around that. And I've just been saying to myself like a mantra, and everything that's coming up, like catching myself in that moment saying, oh, like good or bad, hard to say. I actually can't call this one. And basically, at the very least, I mean, at the most, I think we'll be able to see in the long run how things that seem terrible at the time can end up being wonderful, and vice versa. And that it's kind of like this, you know, snaking path of things essentially never being what we think they are, or at the very least being more complex than something that we can just say is only good or bad. For me, it gets me out of that spiral of like self-pity, victim consciousness, feeling terrible, and just like, you know what? Actually, I don't know if this is good or bad. I don't know where this is leading. I don't know why this is happening. And just gets me out of that spiral that can put me into a really dark, despondent place. And I feel like for me, the balance lies in striking that temperance between like I'm letting myself feel the feelings. For instance, this morning is a great example. I'm crying, I'm sobbing about things with my dad, about just life being hard, about seeing my dad, you know, who is that archetypal first male in my life that I had love for, who in so many ways signifies strength and love and perseverance to me, seeing him crying like and in more pain than I mean, for my dad to have shown the amount of pain that he showed, it just like has hurt so much to realize like how much pain that he's in. And so it's like I'm crying and I'm feeling that pain and I'm being there in that. And I'm also catching myself and saying, you know what, good or bad, hard to say. Because for instance, this got really bad on our drive back from day 2 of our drive back from Wyoming to Texas yesterday. And it was like, holy shit, holy fuck, like this is terrible. Like this is so bad that this is happening on the drive. This couldn't be worse. This is the worst time. This is so bad. This is so bad. This is so bad. And essentially it's turned out like that it's so good that this happened when we were back in Texas. There's a surgeon here who can help him. There are so many synchronicities that it's so much better that this happened when we were in Texas instead of when we were in Wyoming. And even though overall it's an extremely challenging situation, it's like, okay, good or bad, hard to say. Like maybe also, who knows, from these surgeries, my dad's health will actually be better. Good or bad, hard to say. I can't really call this one. And I feel it can be very important to remember that during the times that seem really, really amazing too. It's like, this is gonna, essentially with everything, this is going to turn out to be part of a larger story. And there's gonna be good and bad, or maybe just neither. Maybe there is no such thing as good or bad. And it's hard to say because it's all of it. It just is. I really love that though. It's Shia LeBeouf. I'm just like, I don't know. I can't really call this one. So that's been something that's been helping me a lot. I'm gonna try and, arrowheads. These are just part of the huge collection that my grandfather found over his lifetime, like over 10,000 artifacts. So me loving to collect rocks and feathers and the like, I come by it honestly, right? Remember, good or bad, hard to say, and if someone asks, I don't know. I can't really call this one. We'll see.